calf strain, tendinosis in his right leg. LeBron James also out indefinitely due to that high ankle sprain. And last night, boy, was their absence felt. The Pelicans scored 62 points in the paint as they beat the Lakers, who fell to 0-3 without LeBron this
don't give
season.
them one, Rachel.
Not even giving them that one. 7-9 since AD last played. This is concerning because if you look at the Western Conference standings, LA's in fourth place at the moment, but only 4 games separate them from that 7th seeded slot the Spurs are now in. And remember, 7 through 10 seeds face each other in a play-in tournament to earn the last 2 playoff spots in this season. So it is so important to try to avoid falling below 6 because, Richard, we can say, oh, it doesn't matter the Lakers seeding. Once they're healthy and whole, they could match up against anyone. So what if it has to be in the first round? But if you're in that play-in situation and you have to win one to just get into the playoffs, anything can happen in a given night, right?
Anything can happen, and that's where, it's exciting that they have this little play-in tournament. But I think it also gives teams an opportunity that, maybe there's some teams that are 10th and they've been injured, but they're better than that. Well, obviously, we know the Lakers are better than,
But how dangerous would it be for the Lakers?
It'd be so dangerous. Are you kidding me? First of all, people are asking, if they're going to drop. Do you think the Lakers? Yes, they're going to drop. They lost 4 in a row when Schroeder and AD were out. And this is when they had, the leading guy in MVP in Bron. So with both those guys out, it's just going to be, it's just hold on and hold on.
They are definitely going to slide. I can see them sliding to 6, possibly 7, but I'm not as worried. I think their focus is obviously picking up someone like Drummond would be huge,
right,
but getting AD and LeBron healthy, because normally home court advantage matters, but in this pandemic, it doesn't really matter. To me, to see the Lakers at 6 or 7 would scare 1, 2, or 3 to death. So to me, their health is most important. AD worries me a little bit more than LeBron. Anytime you have that calf Achilles injury, that's scary, especially when you're still a young player. We know LeBron is going to come back strong. So getting these 2 guys strong and healthy as they can possibly be heading into the playoffs is key for the Lakers.
And look, even if it did come down to you have to win this one game
I'm
tonight
taking them over anybody.
to win.
I'm taking them over anybody in a play-in game.
I get that. You know who could be in the play-in? I mean, you could have Luka and the Mavs in there. You could have Steph Curry in there. So it's not necessarily, they're playing.
It's not a gimme. Definitely not a gimme, but I'm
not betting against them.
Yeah, I'm taking them over Luka. I'm taking them over Steph. If AD and LeBron are on the floor and able to play, I'm taking them over anybody in a play-in game.
All right, well, let's move to the favorite in the West. Oh, sorry, producer Steve is in my ear saying, show the schedule, Rachel. So here's the schedule, guys. Richard, you said it's not a question if they're going to drop. Here is who is on the docket. LeBron James out, quote, indefinitely. But the estimate from people who are familiar, experts, athletic trainers who work with these injuries all the time, and I don't know if either one of you ever had a high ankle sprain, a month is kind of one of the general consensuses. So this is what they're looking at over that month. Less gimmies than you would like if you're a Laker fan.
Yeah, there's not a ton of gimmies. And really, you understand there's going to be a fall off, and that's no disrespect to who are on the Lakers teams. You look at the Brooklyn Nets; they're missing quote unquote 2 superstars, even though Kyrie's been in and out of the lineup. But they have a James Harden, right? They have a James Harden, and so here the Lakers are missing 2 superstars, 2 of the top 10 players in the league, and they don't have a James Harden to fall back on, and that's really the issue.
I think with what Richard said, with all due respect to who's playing right now, none of those games you just showed me is a gimme without AD and LeBron. Any given night, to me, they're probably going in as underdogs considering who they're playing, because all these other teams may not be higher ranked, but they have their key guys playing. So when you don't have your 2 best players, 2 top 10 players out, there's no gimmies on what we just saw as far as their schedule goes.
So you mentioned Andre Drummond just a minute ago. The Lakers don't have a ton of flexibility in terms of making a trade. They just don't have the assets. They don't have the cap space. So they could do something before tomorrow's deadline. But in terms of a bigger impact, it is the buyout market. It is someone like Andre Drummond, if he becomes available as a buyout person. What do you think, Richard, of what he will do for them, especially in the short term when LeBron and AD are out?
Well, look, there's a lot of different ways that Drummond can get himself to the Lakers. He can say, no matter who you trade me for, and his agent can have that communication that I don't care if it's a second-round pick, if it's a player, I'm not showing up. So teams can be hesitant, and then they'll force a buyout and get him out of there. If Drummond shows up, he does. He brings them some strength. He brings them some defense. He brings them a force. Now, are his stats and numbers elevated a little bit because he hasn't been on great teams? Yes, but ultimately he is a high-level impact player, almost a better version of what Dwight Howard was for them last year.
I mean, we won't see his impact with the Lakers until AD and LeBron are healthy. He's not going to come in and change the dynamic. He may help them win a game here or there, but we're going to see Drummond's impact most impactful once AD and LeBron are healthy.
And look, I mean, the idea that 62 points in the paint last night for the Pelicans, that's where Andre Drummond can fit in. But you're right, it's when he is with those other guys.
No, don't sass me.
I don't get sassy.
Sass me. Sass me.
Talk about. Don't be giving me that sassiness or what you just told me I was doing. You are so wrong today. Like, you are so wrong. That's 1 out of every 1,000, and we up here hoorahing and praising the Lord. And guess what? The Nets got better.
Welcome to The Jump. I am Rachel Nichols alongside the Bash Brothers, NBA champion Richard Jefferson, NBA champion Kendrick Perkins. Guys, we brought you back today because you promised to play nice, but I don't know how that's going to work out.
But I just don't understand how, with all of the advances in technology, Perk can't figure out how to back up from the camera.
Maybe he doesn't want to, Richard.
No, but no one.
Maybe
what?
Maybe I'm just trying to spread some of this hair that I still have on my face and my head and put it and share it with you. Or maybe, how about this, RJ? You ever heard of the saying, when you're on time, you're probably late? You ever heard of that? You ever heard of that? How about that one?
Yes, I have, and I'll keep my rebuttal to myself. I will keep it to myself.
Richard regularly walks into the studio with about 45 seconds to spare before showtime.
But what they don't understand is that I'm here 45 minutes before, right? So it's just really for dramatic effect. That's the only reason why I do it.
Can you say on television what you're doing for those 45 minutes? Because sometimes it's getting a sandwich, and sometimes, Perk, I don't know.
It could be a salad. It could be numerous things, but we're on Disney, so we're not allowed to talk about that.
All I know is producer Danny has a rule. Don't get fired on a Friday. You've put in the entire week of work. There's no reason to miss that check. So, boys, I will just say,
Well, Perk is still here, so apparently the week is going all right.
Coming up, my friends, we will discuss how Rockets fans should feel today after dealing Victor Oladipo and James Harden in the same season. First, though, what's funny about the NBA trade deadline is that it is, at its backbone, paperwork. Building and unbuilding rosters on paper that teams can only hope will work in real life, moving numbers around on paper to make salary cap and balance sheet configurations work, all the while analyzing spreadsheets that plot out players' projected future production. And yet, for an event that is based in paperwork, sure brings out the wild side in the league's front office execs. Yesterday, we saw swashbuckling stare downs, daring leaps of faith, and in the end, a madcap sprint to the 3 p.m. deadline that brought a cascade of deals that moved 46 players between 23 of the NBA's 30 teams. In fact, there were more trades yesterday than there have been on any deadline day in the past 35 years. Which is even more incredible when you consider that the biggest news coming out of the day was a trade that didn't happen. The Raptors had planned to move their heart and soul of the franchise for reasons so practical that even Kyle Lowry himself seemed at peace with the decision when he spoke at a post-game press conference the night before. And yet, even though the Raptors did get 3 of the NBA's top teams involved in a bidding war that could have significantly changed the balance of this playoffs, none of the deals they were ultimately offered were significant enough to convince team president Masai Ujiri to pull the trigger. Here was Masai last night explaining.
In the heat of the moment, I was surprised, because to be honest, I viewed him, as somebody that can go and put a stamp on what you're trying to do this year, and the teams are selected. I know if he goes to those places, I know what that, I've lived it, I've seen it. I know what the guy does. I know who he is, I hope I'm pardoned that if I valued him too much, but hey, that's what I believe in today.
That was very warm. From a strictly cold and practical angle, though, there is an argument that even if the offers for Lowry were lower than Masai thought that they should be, they're more than nothing, and that while Kyle could re-sign with Toronto as a free agent this summer, or the Raptors could work out a sign and trade if he chooses elsewhere, there's just as good a chance that Kyle simply moves on and Toronto ends up with nothing. If that happens, he would be the 5th Raptors key player in 2 years to leave the team with no assets coming back the other way. And yet, on a day like yesterday, cold and practical just wasn't where the Raptors were interested in when it came to perhaps the most beloved player in franchise history. And so instead, Kyle stayed a Raptor. The same cannot be said for Norm Powell, who has had a career season and will likely be looking for a serious salary package this coming summer. Ujiri moved him to Portland, a team looking to insert itself into the void that the banged-up Lakers are leaving in the West. Did the Blazers do enough to be real contenders? Or did the real level up out West come from the Nuggets, who acquired Aaron Gordon and JaVale McGee? Out East, did the Bulls do enough to climb past the edges of playoff contention by picking up Nikola Vucevic? And what about the Heat? In the past few days, Miami managed to acquire Victor Oladipo, Trevor Ariza, Nemanja Bjelica, while giving up just one rotation player, no first-round picks, and still keeping cap flexibility for free agency this summer. No wonder Pat Riley looked so pleased when he met with the media last night, saying that come playoff time, quote, "I'd watch out for us." Oh, and then there's the Nats, who also managed to come out winners yesterday despite not making any trades. Thanks to the Sixers missing out on Lowry, Brooklyn remains the conference favorite. It was, all in all, a historically wild day that will have repercussions for years to come. Not bad for a bunch of paperwork. And guys, Caesars William Hill didn't update their odds until after we were off the air yesterday due to all the movement. Miami went from plus 1,400 to plus 1,200 after acquiring Oladipo. So they were the big mover. That puts them into the top 4 out east behind Brooklyn for the betting rights, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Philly. So, Perk, what do you think happens now in the East playoff race?
Well, we all know who's the three-headed monster with Milwaukee, Philly, and the Nets, right? But the sleeper is going to be the Eastern Conference champions, and that's the Miami Heat. But I'm not sold on them just yet, and here's why. They lost Jay Crowder in the offseason, and yes, I understand they got Victor Oladipo yesterday in the draft. With the trade, but I don't know which Victor we're going to get. If it's the Victor from 3 years ago or 4 years ago when he took the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James to 7 games, then watch out for the Heat. But if it's going to be the Victor of late, I just don't know. He hasn't been consistent. He hasn't really been healthy. He's been in and out of lineups for whether it was with the Rockets or the. It looks good on paper, but I want to see the action live and up close on the court.
No, Perk is 100% correct, and that's not something you're going to hear me say a lot over the next hour. Over the next hour, you're not going to hear me say that. But Miami has brought themselves back into the conversation because they were struggling, because they've had guys underperform and injuries and COVID, and all the things that come with that. But my biggest thing about the Miami Heat is, are you going to be able to beat 2 of those teams? And I just don't think that they can. If we're talking about them making a legitimate run to the finals again, then you're going to have to most likely beat the Brooklyn Nets and then the Philadelphia 76ers, or you're going to have to beat the Milwaukee Bucks and then the Brooklyn Nets. And I just don't see them beating 2 of those teams back to back to get to the NBA Finals.
Well, look, we didn't talk about the Milwaukee Bucks much yesterday because they didn't make a move yesterday, but we can't forget that they did acquire PJ Tucker earlier in the week. I think that did make them better. Mm-hmm. I am interested to see. Look, when we've seen the Heat and Sixers, for example, match up, Jimmy Butler has often been the wild card in that situation and made sure that his new team has beaten his old team. Not every time, but often. And, we saw what they did to Milwaukee last year, but Milwaukee is better. And then Brooklyn is a whole new thing in the mix this year. So I think it is going to be scrappy in the East. And if you look at the West, we have updated odds for them, too. The Lakers, still the heavy betting favorites. I always want to make this clear. When Vegas does odds, it's about which teams they expect the most money coming in on. That's how the odds are calculated.
How much money they can take from everyone else.
Exactly. Clippers are second, Jazz third, and the Nuggets jumped into the top 4 after their big trade. So, Richard, what do you think happens now in the West playoff race?
Whoo! I don't know to tell you.
What was that noise?
The woo was like, okay, look, the Denver Nuggets got better. They added pieces that they lost in the offseason as far as like athletic players. So you lose Jeremy Grant, you gain Aaron Gordon, who I believe is better than Jeremy Grant. You lose Plumlee, then you gain JaVale McGee. So they kind of saw that what they lost, they needed back.
Right.
So, okay, Utah's been the best team all year long. I think the Clippers, they probably got the one player that they needed. They got the point guard that they needed, and Rondo he's that guy. So I just don't really think that anything changes. If the Lakers are 100% healthy, which is an if, the Lakers are the best team, and there's no one's going to beat them. So I think this in the West. Yeah. So I think this arms race is really for, can we get there? And if the Lakers aren't 100%, can we overtake them? And I think there's a few teams that can.
Well, I have to disagree with you. Even if this Lakers team as constructed, if they're 100% healthy, they're not the best team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, in the Western Conference, RJ. When I'm looking at this team right now, without Anthony Davis and LeBron James, have you been watching them lately? Like last night, listen. Literally, they were shooting shots and they were hitting so hard off the glass. I started ducking. I started ducking from inside the living room of the hotel.
Wait, Listen, Perk, no, stop. Perk, stop. What would the Utah Jazz look like if you took away Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell? What would the Suns look like if you took off Chris Paul and Devin Booker? What would the Clippers look like if you didn't have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George? They would look like the Lakers are looking right now.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't. No, they would not. And here's what I'm saying. Everybody else is getting better. You got the Portland Trail Blazers, in my opinion, who got better yesterday. After watching them against the Miami Heat without even the addition of Norman Powell, looking at C.J. McCollum, how he's tearing it up, coming back off an injury, dropped 30 in the first half. We know what Dame Dollar is capable of. But then they add Norman Powell to the mix, a guy who's averaging 20 points a night on high field goal percent shooting, a big guard with tenacity, and he's a champion. He's coming in with that championship pedigree, and he's battle tested. What I'm saying right now is that the others for the Lakers don't look that convincing to me no more. Like Caldwell Pope is not playing well. Marcus Gasol is not playing well. We had, Taylor Horton Tucker. He's shown us flashes in a small sample size, but he hasn't been playing well. And you can't sit up here and tell me that the Lakers are a top 5 team right now in the Western Conference.
I said if the Lakers are 100% healthy. Now, when you're talking about 100% healthy, you're talking about Anthony Davis before his injury was probably one of the leading guys, Rudy Gobert, but top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year. LeBron James was leading the race for MVP. You lose one of they had the number 1 rated defense. They had come on, Perk. I'm not saying that the guys have played well in their absence. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you get LeBron James back, he makes people around him better. You get Anthony Davis back, he cleans up a lot of defensive mistakes on the other end. So they both make their teammates broadly better. I agree with you, though.
Well, I'm going to say this. You cool with Braun. I'm cool with Braun. You got his number. You call and ask him what's his level of concern right now after watching this Lakers team play without him. You ask him what's his level of concern. Because to me, the role players are not stepping up. And this is why I said yesterday that if I'm the Lakers front office, I am making that trade for Kyle Lowry. I don't care what I got to give up. Are you watching the games, RJ, or are you just coming on here talking about it? You can't be watching the same games I'm watching.
He's calling some of the games.
Thank you. I'm actually calling the games, Perk. Some of us work at nighttime. It's okay. But this is my thing, Perk. I agree.
He works in the morning. I just want to say.
I'm not saying, Perk, that they're playing great. But what we're saying is the addition of these two guys. The reason why Chris Paul was an MVP is when you put him on the team, everyone looks a lot better and a lot more organized. You put Braun on the court, they're going to look a lot better and a lot more organized.
So I'm going to give the two of you. I'm going to give the two of you a commercial break to figure this out.
We're not going to agree.
Producer Danny knows that, hey, we could just let this go. Oh, he tells me that we have a little segment during the commercial break. So look for that because they'll still be arguing about this. Also look for Dwight Howard because coming up, we will discuss the two of them posed together, compared rings, and then Dwight got ejected from the game in which he earned his championship ring. It was an altercation with Montrezl Harrell, bumping into him at the end of the first quarter. Richard, what do you feel is going to be more memorable from last night for Dwight?
Well, look, this is the best way for Dwight to do it. Dwight can make it seem like I was just walking to my bench, but Dwight, then you're insulting everybody else's intelligence. You had been egging him on. You did it last year in the postseason with Jokic. Like, that's part of, like, you're trying to get under people's skin. But it's silly. It's childish. Come on, man. Be smarter. Read the room.
I mean, I thought it was actually entertaining because here you are, you're missing Joel Embiid, you're missing LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and you want to see some action. You up on the late night game. I want to see some action. I want to see some heat. Montrezl Harrell and Dwight Howard was bringing life to the game. It was started off boring. I want to see that smoke. RJ, to say you from the old school, you really getting soft.
Ain't nobody getting soft. I'm just saying it was childish. It was like, I am okay with this, but this right here, I'm not. I have no issue with that. But when it turns into you getting thrown out of the game. Now again, the 76ers were fine without Dwight Howard, but it's just like, that's just, you got to read the room better.
I will say, by the way, of the two players returning, I do want to give a little props to Danny Green, who played great last night and had a really nice
Can we focus on that?
Building. And there were very few, I think less than 50, but they had less than 50 fans in the building for one of the first times in the Staples Center all season, if not the first. So at least he got to do it in front of a tiny, bitty little crowd. Make Rooks. Check out the move and step back here from Tyrese Halliburton. Perk, does he have any shot of edging into the Rookie of the Year conversation now that LaMelo is out indefinitely?
I think he's at the number 3 spot behind Anthony Edwards, but I mean, he's always been in there. This kid is special. I mean, he's fun to watch. He's very mature. I mean, you know, hey, he just played winning basketball. Shout out to the Kings, by the way, who've been playing inspiring basketball.
Okay, yeah, no, look, Tyrese Halliburton is all rookie team. He shouldn't have fallen as low as he did, so the Kings got to steal. The Kings got to steal. But I will say this, though, there's no chance of him getting even creeping in. But he's an all-rookie top 5 member and deserving.
Well, I broke my own rule because it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine to say conversation because, frankly, everyone's in the damn conversation these days in terms of winning.
We won't
you guys both took it the right way of saying in terms of winning, so thank you for that. Miss Safety. Wiz out and running. Russ throws down a very angry dunk. Angry! Richard, our resident dunker. Who are the angriest dunkers ever for you?
Hey, Perk, you see how she didn't come to you first there? I think the angriest dunkers were probably... Are you okay, Rich? I think the angriest dunkers, Latrell Sprewell. Thank you, I'm glad. I didn't even see these highlights, but Latrell Sprewell... Dr. Duncanstein himself, Daryl Dawkins. Shaq, we got to include Shaq in that. Like,
I'm sure
Kenyon Martin. Kenyon, my guy Kenyon, look at this. Badass yellow boy. Show him the tattoo, Kmart. No, but look, Russ is up there. I wouldn't put him in the Mount Rushmore, but he's in the top 10 most aggressive dunkers.
Perk, you play with the man.
I mean, he attacks the rim with authority. He got to be top 10. But I just hate the fact that they were up 17 or 15 at half and lost the game. I mean,
that's not what we're talking about, Perk.
You just went off, Richard. You just went off subject on the first topic. Nobody told you nothing. Rachel asked you a question about the most memorial part about the ring ceremony of the Dwight Howard getting ejected, and you went on to talk about how clownish it was. So, like, let me do me.
Perk. I will say this for you on this show, you can always do you, Kendrick Perkins. That is the you I want.
Go do yourself.
Great.
Go do yourself, Perk.
He wants to play for them. Well, he gets to audition, and Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra and everybody in that culture is going to hold him accountable. Now he gets to audition, and now he gets to be a part of the Eastern Conference champs, a team that went to the finals, and try to prevail them to winning the championship and show why he deserves a Miami Heat jersey in the future and a contract. So I think it's everything.
No, it's something. I'm not a big fan of auditioning, right? We've seen that go wrong. We saw that with Rondo in Dallas a few years ago. When you're auditioning, if he wants to be there, if he would have just played out the season in Houston, anywhere, and then he wanted to go someplace in free agency, then it's not an audition. Then the audition audition is a 3-4 year contract. So if all of a sudden he goes to Miami, and let's say it's not perfect, it actually could lower his value because that's one less team that's willing to pay for him. So look, Victor Oladipo is going to get plenty of money. He's going to get a big contract, but I'm not big on we're just going to audition you in a place that you want to be for 30 games and then judge you on the postseason.
Well, I mean, it wasn't necessarily his choice, right? Once he turned down that longer-term deal, which is probably good for him in terms of his big-picture career, that the Rockets were going to move him and they were going to kind of send him to wherever he got sent to. He was going to be a free agent this summer. So, yes, he could have then gone to Miami then, but it's an audition really on the Heat side. Bobby Marks brought up a great point last night. Victor Oladipo's health has been a question. And when you are signing someone as a free agent, yes, you get to do a full medical after the deal is agreed to, but not before. And even that full medical is basically a physical and anything that information you can acquire in one day. Well, this way, they're going to have 3 months, basically, with Victor, off and on, seeing how his body weathers the regular NBA season. And that will give them a better idea of what they want to offer
in Miami
this summer. And it is a little harder in Miami with the body fat rules and everything else that they've got going. So I think for them, it was a smart pickup. There was a lot of conversation going into this of why would Miami give up anything when they can probably get him without giving up assets this summer. But you do see with how little, frankly, they had to give up. It is worthwhile for them because they get him for the rest of the season. They get him for the playoff run, and they are going to now get a little bit more information about him as well. I do want to get to the other side and the Harden angle, though, because after all is said and done, this is what the Rockets netted from James Harden. 4 first-round picks, right? That's good. 5 pick swaps. Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, Dante Exum. I'm going to stop there. And Richard, we don't know who those picks will become. And also, you have to remember, this is kind of restoring picks to Houston. It's not a bunch of extra picks the way Oklahoma City now seems to control the draft until the end of time. Houston gave away so much to Oklahoma City just to get Russell Westbrook. This now kind of puts them back in the positive side of the ledger with a little bit more in terms of picks and first rounders and things like that. Will Houston end up regretting how they handled the Harden trade?
In the short term, the answer is yes, without a doubt. When you look at could you have gotten there was rumors you could get Ben Simmons on your team, but they wanted somebody else. And so I don't know exactly what was offered, but I will say in the short term, this doesn't look good. I had an NBA coach tell me that, you know what picks and pick swaps and potential do? They get you fired, right? Because a lot of time coaches aren't around to see these 4 first-round picks or 5 pick swaps, and they're not around to develop the talent for 4 years. And you got to hope that one of those teams has an off year, and all of a sudden they're a top 5 and top 10 pick like the Brooklyn Nets were, and that's how Boston had all of these picks because the Brooklyn Nets were in a bad spot. So maybe in 5 years it might be okay, but today it is looking really bad.
It's real bad. And down here in Texas, the Houston Rockets fans, they are pissed off. Mm-hmm. And here's why. Ever since Tillman Fertitta took over the team, it's been a downward slope. It's been going downhill. And he needs to learn how to be an owner. He needs to call Mark Cuban and learn how to be an NBA owner, right? Learn how to put people in position and let them do their jobs. To me, he's too involved. He won't say so on every single thing that's going on when really he don't really know, and it's okay. Sit back on the sideline, cross your legs, invite some of your friends, drink a little Ciroc here and there, or Lobo tequila. Chill out. It's cool. But at the end of the day, he has to learn how to be an owner. Right now, they dropped the ball tremendously because there's no reason that Karis LeVert or Ben Simmons should not be in a Rockets uniform.
Well, look, only Tillman Fertitta knows how much money was a factor in all of these moves. Obviously, draft picks don't draw a salary, and even once they turn into actual people, they are on rookie contracts. So I don't know if not wanting to pay a guy like Ben Simmons or a guy like Karis LeVert or even a guy like Jarrett Allen was part of the equation here. In terms of, gee, we've got a bunch of draft picks, I will always say, yeah, you can draft guys and hope they maybe turn into someone like Ben Simmons. I always said that when the Chicago Bulls were talking about, trading away Jimmy Butler. Maybe if you get some picks back, you could maybe possibly in 5 years develop someone who could become Jimmy Butler. Guess what? You could just have Jimmy Butler. So I am always a little bit curious when teams go the other route, unless it's like the Thunder, where you were just getting so many at-bats at the plate, you know you were going to end up developing really good talent down the road. But again, it might have been what this team needed at this time. And as you say, RJ, we'll check back with them in what will now be 4 or 5.